Hello everyone, I'm Johnny from Chairshot Gaming. Normally we talk about video games, anime, movies, basically all nerd culture. Today we are switching gears to talk about Puerto Rico. I had a chance to sit down with one of my best friends in life to discuss what is happening in Puerto Rico. And this is what he had to say.
My name is Andreus Sanchez. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, but my family is obviously from Puerto Rico. I've been from the area pretty much my whole life, and I've been lucky enough to visit the island a few times throughout my life.
What is your connection to Puerto Rico?
Yeah. So my father is full-blooded Puerto Rican, so that would make me half actually. So a good chunk of my family obviously is from the island. Sanchez is a very big name, so we have a pretty hefty family. And again, like I said, I was able to visit the island a few times, get to kind of go back to my roots, learn where my father comes from, and really meet a lot of family down there that I would have never had the opportunity to do so beforehand.
Seeing as you have a large family, what part or parts of Puerto Rico does your family come from?
Sure. So my family is from Juana Diaz. It is kind of towards the south of the island. There's two large cities that most people know of. It's San Juan, which is like the capital of Puerto Rico, and then there's Ponce, which is pretty much the opposite side on the south tip of the island. So Juana Diaz is only a few minutes away from the second largest city, Ponce.
Can you give us a little insight on what actually happened to Puerto Rico?
A lot. So obviously they weren't hit with just one, but multiple hurricanes on top of, admittedly, a degrading power source of energy and just resources they had on the island for a while now. And when the hurricanes finally hit, it really kind of shook the foundation of the island itself. They haven't really been in the best position for about 10 or so years. They've been financially declining, just like I said, as far as resources, their utilities. They've been on a steady decline just for other reasons. And when the hurricane came, it really just kind of shook the foundation itself and in some ways shattered the culture itself of Puerto Rico. They have nothing really to rely on.
What parts of Puerto Rico that you saw got hit the hardest?
Obviously, the island, it was flooded throughout, I would say, a good 75-80% of the island itself. But even more so is the resources. I think that's the part that people tend to overlook. Originally, the death toll in Puerto Rico was only 16. Just as recently as just a few days ago, they've said officially 48 deaths related to the hurricane. Depending on which sources you go, I know El Vocero, it's a newspaper, Hispanic one, obviously. They just said recently that there was an article where over 350 corpses were loaded into the most recent morgue. I've seen some numbers up as high as 700. It's really hard to confirm. What most people don't realize, it's not actually the hurricane itself that did most of the damage. It's the lack of the resources. The fact that we don't have clean drinking water. The fact that we don't have clean food coming in. The fact that we don't have the medical supplies we need. Not only for the people that are getting sick now, but the people that were sick before, whether they were diabetic or they had some kind of, respiratory situation. Some people were on ventilators. There's a lot of resources that don't get taken into account when things like that happen. So I would say the worst would definitely be the lack of resources on the island.
Would you say the resources that are missing should be the main focal point in the relief effort? And what are some of the missing resources?
Absolutely. One of the biggest dangers right now is water. As a matter of fact, this is several weeks after the last hurricane hit, and still to this day, 1/3 of the island is without water. There's actually something that's been creeping up lately. It's something known as I'm not a medical jargon here, so leptospirosis. This is basically saying that people are so desperate for drinking water, they have such a lack of it that they're actually going to streaks and creams or streams and trying to find their own methods of drinking water, not taking into account that there's bacteria in that water. Sometimes there's fecal matter from animals, and this water is getting these people very, very sick. It's an easily treated situation, but due to the lack of medical resources, there are people dying here simply because they don't have clean drinking water. I think one of the other resources that people can really get involved with is just financial support to be able to make sure that we are able to get the resources to where we need. There's been such an outcry of support, and for everybody that has gotten involved, I'd like to thank you so very much. On behalf of me and everybody for the island of Puerto Rico. I think we are getting to a point where we have a lot of supplies, but logistically it's a nightmare. People don't know how to get the supplies, one, to the island, and two, how to distribute them to the island. For those people who don't really know the topography of the island itself, it's actually very mountainous. That's one thing that people don't realize. You think of Puerto Rico and you think of, palm trees and coconuts and sand beaches. And, there are definitely parts of the island like that, but there's enormous mountain ranges throughout the entire island. And there are some cities where it's hard to get to even before something like this happens. The island itself is only 100 miles wide, but some of those areas are almost inaccessible because they're so high up in the mountains. So being able to get to the people that really need the resources the most is really becoming a logistical challenge. There were issues where they didn't have enough truck drivers before. They're getting supplies that are mounting up. They just don't know how to distribute them to the people that need it the most right now. So obviously financial support is greatly welcome to be able to help out the logistics, taking shipping freights over to get the resources there, helping people being able to paratroop the resources to where they need, as well as just getting involved and really pushing for support more than anything else. I think one of the biggest things that's come out of this is the realization of how few people actually realize the correlation between America and Puerto Rico. They think this is just kind of an island by us. I really want to put out there, and many of you already do know, but Puerto Ricans are Americans by all sense of the word. There's 3.5 million people on this island, and like I said, 1/3 of the island is still without water. 16% of the island has power. So they're not in a good position. And I think just spreading the word and spreading support, even if you aren't able to do something, if you can really get the word out there and the message and really show people just how in dire need they are, you might be able to resonate with somebody that has the resources or the capabilities, or maybe has time off that can actually go to the island and help, or whatever the situation may be. I think just getting the word out there, showing our support, and just things like, drinking water, clothing, any kind of over-the-counter medical supplies you may be able to donate, anything that you can get involved with that you think that you might need for day-to-day care, general hygiene products, feminine hygiene products. I mean, it's it's not a good situation.
With Puerto Rico being an island, what kind of adversity or current standing laws does Puerto Rico face when it comes to getting relief? And what kind of a process do the donations have to go through in order to get to the island of Puerto Rico?
Sure. So there was recently an act that had to be lifted because by law since the 1920s, I believe it was, I can't remember the exact date at the moment, you had to be an official American cargo load or something along those lines to be able to get supplies to Puerto Rico. So hypothetically, let's just say Jamaica or Cuba or somewhere wants to be able to ship supplies to Puerto Rico. They would have to go through Florida, be able to switch everything over to an American dock, and then come back. That has since changed, but I do really want to stress that this is a logistical nightmare. Obviously, Puerto Rico is an island. It is surrounded by water. That's not surprising to anybody. But being able to get the resources there is really what seems to be the biggest bottleneck of the situation itself. People have been fantastic for getting supplies, but we need to make sure we can actually get the supplies to the island. And once we get them on the island, we need to make sure that they're being distributed evenly. As I mentioned before, there's some cities that are almost impossible to get to. So I really worry for those people and the people that are deep, deep up in the mountains, because while we are getting support, I really fear that it's not being distributed appropriately.
What are some good relief sites, or groups, or companies that would benefit Puerto Rico the most?
Sure. So I think that the Habitat for Humanity of Puerto Rico, that's a good one. There is a ton of different GoFundMes that you can look into. I would also definitely suggest Convoy of Hope, Direct Relief for Puerto Rico, the Hispanic Foundation, I believe it's called. That would probably be one of the ones I would prefer the most. I believe the ones that you guys have been so gracious as to link to a lot of your videos coming up. So I would really like to thank you for taking that opportunity to really spread the message. The Hispanic foundations and federations, I think, would definitely be good organizations to get involved with financially to be able to help. I think the big thing looking forward is if you're looking at organizations to donate to, look into how much of the relief goes directly towards helping. Some organizations will give up to 75% of the donation to the island or the relief. Some places will only give 50%. Some of them, I think the Hispanic Foundation, that one gives up to 90%. So making sure that the most of your money is able to get to where it needs to go is really going to matter the most.
Last question of our interview. I want to go back and ask you about your family. Earlier you mentioned having a lot of relatives.
Yes.
But have you heard back from everyone?
That's an interesting question. To answer that simply, no. Um, Again, I have a very large family. We have, it is absolutely massive. There are some areas of Puerto Rico where the majority of the city is family. I have been able to get a hold of many of my cousins, and I am so grateful for that. But there are so many that, when I had gone to the island previous times, that maybe I just met in passing, or just loosely related cousins that I'm not in as close communication with as I would like to be. So unfortunately, no, I haven't really been able to hear from everyone. I do know that one of my closer cousins just recently lost his entire home in Puerto Rico. Um, some of the houses aren't built as sturdily as they need to be to handle something of that kind of devastation, and their houses are gone. Um, I have been searching for weeks, and I still haven't gotten a clear answer as to the family home in Juan de Diaz that myself and 4 generations have been through. I don't know if that home exists anymore. I don't know if Ito's down the street where you could go and get your supplies from anytime you woke up in the morning, if that's there anymore. I don't know if my cousins in the mountains are okay. I don't know if my cousins coming down to Ponce are okay. And it's just 3.5 million people that don't have what they need. 3.5 million Americans. And the fact that we can't get basic medical supplies to make sure that, if we have children on respirators, that they can live, to make sure that we have gas or diesel for generators for, children that need surgeries, or for elderly people, or to make sure the doctors have what they need to perform their proper surgeries. Just knowing that there's that many people, that many Americans, that many of my family, it's devastating, because you don't get a solid answer as to who's okay. I'm so grateful to hear of my family that is doing well, and please know that you're all in my thoughts, but there are so many more that I have no idea what's going on with, and I think that's what's the most terrifying.
Do you have any final words you would like to say to the audience watching?
So for those of you that have helped, I cannot express my gratitude. Not only have you helped your fellow Americans, you've helped my family and the family of millions of others. I really can't stress that I do feel that this is a humanitarian crisis at the moment. They are getting the support they need, but it is trickling in so slowly. For those of you who weren't able to help, there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay, The most important thing is that you keep people in your hearts, and that we have your moral support. That really means a lot. To the first responders and people who have been on the island and helping, thank you. You have a piece of my heart that is indescribable, and it will always be there. And for the people of the island of Puerto Rico, and for family here on the States, Boricua strong. We help our own. If you look at videos and everything going on, we're not just sitting around waiting for people to save us. We're out there. We're, clearing debris. We're doing everything we can to help everybody else, and stay strong. We are strong people, and we will not be beaten by this. Nothing has ever stopped us, and I don't think anything ever will. Just know that you're in our thoughts, and we're going to do everything we can. I'm going to do everything we can. I'm going to continue to spread the message. I'm going to continue to scream it from the rooftop. People hear your voice, and I'm going to make sure that that stays up.
We here at Chairshot Gaming will continue to link the HispanicFederation.org website in all of our videos. United States citizens, but most importantly, human beings need our help in this time of crisis. Please give what you can. Lastly, to the Sanchez family, we are hoping that you and all the other families of Puerto Rico are safe. From all of us here at Chairshot Gaming, we thank you for all of your support.